the origin. Miriam is from a Neo Advaita school. I'm assuming because she used to teach about that whole shebang of there's no one here, there's no one suffering, there's nothing to get. It's another a buzzword is energetically happening. I don't know what that means when you say there's nothing happening, then there's energetically happening. This kind of confusion where yes, you get to the direct kind of pointing, but can one turn around and say that inquiry is something that's really in depth and really gone in and penetrated through the mind and the intellect and therefore has a solid understanding? Or is it something where you pointed to and your mind's not ready? And suddenly, what happens to the mind that's not ready? What happens to the thoughts? They go crazy, they go haywire. Same with images and memories we have, they go haywire. And I think what we're seeing today is Miriam's on the timeline where a lot of people are going to end up being on. Um, and I'm not pointing at her specifically. When she was Nargis, I actually felt in the beginning her content was rather actually not too bad for Neo Advaita, to be honest. There are people that are a lot worse, the Jim Newmans and the Tony Parsons, and Emerson. They introduce people to this, get them ready, tell them they're self-realized, and actually technically they are self-realized if you think about it. If I tell you there's nothing for you to get here, what's left?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so I don't know what you if you ever watched any videos of these people or got to know them.
I watched myself.
You watched this.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's funny because I remember when I had my first awakening or non-dual realization. It was very disorienting for the mind. Like I remember just like looking at my room and I couldn't perceive separation between myself and the walls. It's like everything was just merged. Like I saw the chair in front of me. I was like, wait, I'm not separate from this chair. And my mind was trying to conceptualize and understand what the hell was going on. And then I would look at myself, like I would do meetings with my team, and I'd look at myself on Zoom. And I'm like, who is that? Like I don't even recognize myself. So there was a part of me that got very disassociated from this spontaneous experience. Um, and then I tried to understand what was going on, and then I fell down the rabbit hole. That's how I found Mariam, actually, or Nargis at the time. It was because I had no idea what was going on, and I felt like hearing these people talk about their experiences helped me ground mine on some level. And so the thing I started to affirm to myself was like, there's no one here. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. And this became like and there was a deep peace in that. It's like all egoic achievements that I had previously had dissolved because I was one with everything. There was no separation. It was like just the game is done, the game is complete. And so in that state of completion, there was deep bliss. It's like, wow, like there is truthfully. It was like a big weight had been lifted off my shoulders. But the thing is, after some months, I started to realize that I was like gaslighting myself into this non-dual state. So anytime I would have a human desire, or I would want to go out and whatever it may be, anything human, make money, meet women, I'd be like, why would I do that? There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. And so I was just reaffirming this whole Neo Advaita concept. I didn't even know what it was called at the time, but um, yeah. So it became this dangerous loop, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
But it's
that
not true non-duality. That's the final thing I want to say. Like it's not true non-duality because you're actually rejecting one aspect of life. You're like stuck in this realm, but you're not accepting the human aspect. It's like that's duality. You're basically living in a duality.
yes. Yeah, and it's crazy because that duality is swapped with the concept of non-duality, right? So the concept overrides the actual reality you're experiencing because you cannot deny the human experience unless one will go down a very dangerous path for the mind. And that's what I find happens. And what you're doing really is just saying affirmations to yourself. My Yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. um and you I'm not doing a thumbs up for Neo Advaita at all. So, but yeah, it's and that's what it does. Because so I think it gets things confused with when it borrows things from different traditions. So some of it they obviously get from Advaita Vedanta, and then there's some they get from Buddhism. So the emptiness part they get from Buddhism, and the fullness part they get from Advaita Vedanta. But they do none of the background that those traditions offer and get you to. They don't do any of that work. They just take you to the immediacy of
Mm.
what is actually the true self, whether it's the non-self or the self. It's the same thing. But they just get you there, and they're like, okay, now fly.
So
And
you're basically saying it skips a bunch of steps.
a load of steps. Is your mind first of all ready for it? Is your intellect even ready for the definitions to interpret this experience? Because something has to happen. Either you have the knowledge beforehand, or you have to then catch up with that knowledge. For example, anyone that's had a mystical experience most likely has either gone to a guru or they've gone to the scriptures to get the language, if they didn't have any prior knowledge to this before. Not one single person you will know who hasn't gone there. They've gone to a yoga school, they've done something. Whilst with people that, if they approach these Neo Advaita teachers, where are they going to get the background for? Because they're told there's no need for it. They're just words, they're just concepts. You don't need to know that. You are this. There's no one here to grab any concept or accept any thought. And you're there thinking, well, am I not meant to accept this thought? Because then I'm going to be out of this non-dual state. Do you see how it can get someone crazy? It's very dangerous, very, very dangerous in my opinion.
Mm.
I'm not saying that the people like Tony Parsons who are experts, I think they have a bit more of a heart to them. There's a bit more grounding with them if you stay with them. But still, there is no philosophy. So what are you standing with? What is actually the foundation?
Yes.
Yeah, if you want
I,
to become a...
well,
Go ahead, Leo, go ahead.
I was I was gonna say I think that a lot of people end up going for this Neo Advaita out of trauma or some level of spiritual bypassing. It's like there are uncomfortable emotions in the body, and so it is almost a way of avoiding to feel those emotions. Um, that's at least what I found myself doing in during that process, because it's very disassociative, and I think the people that have experienced an awakening on that level have suffered a lot, been through a lot of trauma, and so the ego just gives up, and then there's a split that happens. You're just completely outside of the body. I remember doing a coaching call once. Actually, this was right after that experience, and I couldn't get any words out of the guy because all he was saying is like, "There's no one here. There's no one here. There's no one here." I was like, "What is this? This is kind of spooky." I got kind of scared. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, "What am I doing?" Um, and I was genuinely intrigued by it on some level. But I remember coming out of it just feeling like I was. It felt like so inhuman in a way. Like that I wasn't talking to like an actual person. And I guess my impression of him was that this is a man that has suffered deeply, deeply, deeply suffered, and is just unable to stay in this human experience. So I have compassion for people that are like stuck in that Neo Advaita thing, to be honest.
Yeah.
What does Neo Advaita actually mean?
It's basically um it's a term that was used. I can't remember who created the term. but it was back, I think, in the 90s where this term was coined, and it was basically to say it's Advaita, so non-duality without the Vedanta. So they ignore the whole of the Vedantic philosophy and it just goes straight to the non-duality. So you also have, like, say, the Ramakrishna school of Vedanta. They call that Neo Vedanta. So it's new Vedanta. Osho, Neo Sannyas, it's new Sannyas. So this was like kind of new Advaita, is what they termed themselves as. And I don't know what they really call themselves now. I think it's still Neo Advaita, really.
New
Yeah.
Age.
New, yeah, it is very new agey, very new agey.
So, what's your impression of the path that people should walk down? I'd be curious to know what you feel.
So obviously, I'm of the path of Advaita Vedanta, so I would always speak for that. But I'm aware that Buddhism also has non-duality in its schools, in its philosophies. So I would say whatever you follow, whether it's Buddhism non-duality or Hindu non-duality, uh, and obviously there are Christian non-duality and Islamic non-duality too, but it's very it's not so well known, and as it's not as, I would say, the construct isn't there as much compared to the other two schools. Uh, so with Hinduism and Buddhism, there is at least a solid foundation uh, of a framework that a seeker can use in order to actually be prepared for that non-dual realization. So that non-dual realization absolutely makes sense. So instead of it being um, So instead of them feeling that there's nothing here to get, they realize actually that nothing really is everything there is. And it's a different, so it's not so negative, it's actually a bit more positive than the Neo Advaita schools um, use their language for. Um, and they don't discredit the human experience, which is the main thing. They acknowledge that at least on a human level, like I use this example quite a lot. Yes, I can realize that I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. But say someone, well, if I'm walking on the street and someone punches me in the face, I'm not going to turn around and say, I am Brahman. I'm going to feel the pain. The body's going to feel pain. Rahul is going to feel pain. I have to acknowledge that. So there's a relative reality we obviously function in, but all we have to remember with these schools is that they tell us that this human experience is just relative, just for the name and form, for the construct of the world, so we can relate with the world. But ultimately, we know who we really are. So it's not a duality. It may seem like a duality, but you could say it's two levels of that one reality that we're living in, that we are. You know, even what we see as different or separate is actually not really separate. It's one and the same as us. I think most mystical experiences take us there, where you say, well, me and the rock is the same. The rock still has its identity, but we are one and the same. Or me and that other person, we are one and the same. We are that same one reality. And that's what comes from true non-duality. So I'm not saying non-duality is also there in other schools of Hinduism, but the main one is Advaita, and Buddhism. I can't remember the names of the schools, but mostly they're all non-dual. Most of them are non-dual. And what they point to is, and this is important, that the experience of non-duality, of that non-dual awareness, doesn't actually leave you. It doesn't leave you. You don't have to keep reminding yourself of it, because you are it. You just have to be aware of that awareness. That is how simple it really is. So if thoughts arise, they're happening in your awareness. It's not separate to you. And that's the So, for example, when you had that coaching call and they're saying, well, there's no one here, there's no one here, there's nothing here, there's nothing here to get. What they're doing is really, they're not acknowledging what really is here. What they
So
want
what
you
you're
to,
saying is that Advaita Vedanta is an acknowledgement of both the emptiness and the fullness in the human experience simultaneously.
yeah,
Whereas the Neo Advaita, I'm not familiar with these terms, but just to give context, but the Neo Advaita is like the full, just empty state. Is that your? Is that how you would summarize it?
yeah, but they will probably argue with me and say there's something energetically happening. See, that's one of the words that they use, and I'm confused. If there's nothing here, then where's this energy come from? Like, where's it arisen from? But yeah, I would obviously, I would say they say there's nothing to get, so that it is empty. Um, yeah, but we would say that. In fact, I think. One of the Upanishads, in fact, there's a mantra which is based on the Purnam, which is the fullness. So, and you could say for us, even though this consciousness is formless, it's also full. Everything is contained in it. Um, the realization is Sat Chit Ananda. So Sat meaning existence, Chit meaning consciousness, that's what you are, and Ananda is bliss. There's bliss after this experience of understanding that existence and consciousness are one and the same. It's all oneness, and that's how simple it is. But I don't know why Neo Advaita needs to bypass all that. Like right now, no thought is arising, but we are aware of those thoughts, or even of the silence that we're experiencing. Awareness is still present. And they even say there's no awareness. This is a crazy thing too. So how can you even how can you even acknowledge what you're experiencing if you're saying awareness doesn't exist? The worst thing actually, and maybe we should talk about this, and this is why it's a dark tunnel, is I've heard Neo Advaita teachers turn around and say there's no, in fact, I think I heard someone mention it the other day, that that there's no suffering, there's no mental health illness, there's no such thing as suicidal thoughts. That doesn't exist.
Shiva, I figured out who your next guest is going to be.
Oh,
We're
buddy.
gonna we're gonna get an extreme Neo Advaita teacher or someone along those lines.
You should. I mean, maybe, that is important because we also need to kind of understand what they're really thinking. But they're good with language. They're good at what I say. What they do is a good form of hypnotism, because if they're telling you constantly that there's nothing, no one here, there's nothing to get, there's no such thing as mental illness, just think how happy that person is going to be if they're going through a mental health crisis. Think how out of the woods they will feel because, they're cured now, because there's no such
Yeah,
thing as this.
I just don't think it's authentic though. That's the
Of
thing.
course it isn't. Of course. It's not. Because it comes back to bite them. I can name a few where they've deleted the channels. There was this, there's obviously Occult Theo. There was a guy called Kenny, he was in Florida. There was this Ariana Reflex. Um, she was big. She left. She sent me a long email asking me to delete her videos, my reaction video to her video. Um, there's obviously Nergis originally was Neo Advaita. Bentino, her supposed twin flame. He was Neo Advaita too. Jeff Foster, he's still a teacher, but he's abandoned the Neo Advaita school.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I mean,
quite a few.
he started speaking about the human experience, and that was about as far as it went.
Yeah. I mean, he had to denounce Bentino. He had to go as far as that because in the end, you were associated with where both of them obviously had two different paths, but they collided at one point. There's so many. So you have to catch them quick, Shiva, before the
Yeah,
goes.
I would definitely like that. That'd be very fun. And this conversation is making me realize that in all the professions that we have in the world, a lawyer, doctor, mechanic, healthcare practitioner, you have to undergo lots of studying, severe studying, before somebody gives you a certificate, and now you're capable and competent to deal with other human beings. Except for the spirituality game for some reason, or spirituality field. There's nothing. If you have some teacher and you misunderstand them, you can teach online. And it's probably the most potent area of work, yet there's no regulation, zero. If you want to heal somebody, that's very regulated. If you want to heal somebody in the mind, meaning mentally or like spiritually, go right ahead. Share your ideas online and let's see where that goes. So yeah, it's gonna take some time before people start to awaken that this is a very potent field of work, and lots of possibilities, lots of potential is here. So you got to be very respectful.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, man. There's so many people that have uh, I think we talked about this in our preparation call where we discussed how even Sadhguru has, I think, a number of courses, and they each take you to the next level. And I bet you he could teach you the direct truth instantaneously, without any problem. But the problem is, once someone gets to enlightenment, he understands the declaration becomes dangerous. I'm guaranteeing he understands that. So when you go to that course, what's happening is he's making sure the identification that would get attached to I am enlightened, meaning the name and form is enlightened, not necessarily that person realizing consciousness is enlightened. Two different things. Where I would say if Sadhguru or anyone like him says they're enlightened, they're talking about consciousness, not the name and form. The name and form is irrelevant at this point for them. You know, they're on borrowed time, if you want to say, because they've transcended the identification. So these courses that they do, this process, this sadhana they have to do, but each and one of us have to do, is to make sure we don't fall back into ego when it comes to that tipping point when we reach that peak of enlightenment, where the next step could take us to the point where there's no return. But unfortunately, because our sadhana wasn't proper, it becomes ego identity again. So that's something we have to be really careful of. And that's why I feel these schools are necessary. Or having a teacher that will guide you properly. It should be coached. I think it should be more one-on-one. I think someone, I think maybe you said it, Shiva, like the age of the gurus is kind of weaning away, or it's gonna go. I would say I think the age of the gurus is going to be where it's going to go back to the Vedic times where there was, you know, a small group. It doesn't have to be masses anymore. The guru of the masses is kind of gone. And with the age of the internet, it's already happening, you know. So yeah, that's required. Yeah, definitely. I mean, anyone that thinks they can just be enlightened from attending one Zoom call with a Neo Advaitin is absolutely deluded. I mean, I have no hesitation in saying they're absolutely deluded.
What's your definition of a self-realized or enlightened individual?
That person that's transcended suffering and has removed all identification that they're the body and mind, that the body and mind is what they use, is not what they are. What they are is, this formless awareness, this formless consciousness, this Brahman, um, or God, if we want to use that word. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of connotations these days, but that's what it is. But when I say this, I don't mean it in any grandiose way. It's very humbling. You're very humbled by this. You don't see yourself as better as anyone or worse than anyone. The polarities disappear. You know, the other person would tell you they are ignorant of their true self. You won't see them as ignorant. You will see them as you are. But you will work with them to get to where you are, so to speak. Then the entertainment of duality will play. And that's what I mean by when the guru has to come down and play the game of being human. So for me, a self-realized person is that which is aware of their true identity, transcended suffering, and has completely removed all strings of attachment to the identification that they're the name and form. So in my case, that I'm Rahul and I have this labels
So what's
attached
the
to me.
difference between that perspective and a Neo Advaita perspective?
The Neo Advaita perspective will be that they they say there's no one here to get. There is no awareness. So it leaves you with nothing to grasp because they say
Okay,
there's nothing for you to grasp. Well, what we say is actually, no, there is something. It's not necessarily that you're grasping this, but you are this. And what you have is an amazing opportunity of being in a human form where you can express this truth and express this reality to people who want it. Again, it's not about getting a load of followers. If you can help just one person, that's your job done. Imagine just one more person in this world, and they transfer that to another person. That's all you want to do. And if you think on that level, the idea of being a big shot uh, guru on YouTube or whatever goes out the window.
would you say you're self-realized or enlightened?
I will never declare it. I will never declare it. It's, as I always say, it's none of your business in the nicest way possible. But have I experienced what they talk about, the sages talk about? Then yes, I have experienced what they've talked about. I would say I'm on the path of abiding in it. So the refinement is still happening. So where people may talk about getting 100% enlightened, I won't say I'm like that, but definitely there's, I've had this awakening experience. Now it's kind of refining. The understanding is refining, and all those things that would stop one from understanding their true nature, those blockages are being seen and being, unclogged, so to speak. So yes, to say that one is enlightened, I'm very hesitant to ever make that claim, even if it happens and when it happens. But that's me. I don't think nobody should follow what I say. I mean, people can do what they want. I mean, some people should say it to trigger people. I mean, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
If you know someone's going to get triggered by it, do it for all purposes. But um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I felt the more I've got deeper into spirituality, I think it makes you humbler. I don't, I can't see how you can turn around and say, "Well, I'm the enlightened one." I find it very difficult to comprehend.
So
Um,
basically, in summary, just follow me and Shiva because we're both
yeah,
enlightened.
yeah.
Don't follow Rahul.
Don't follow me at all. Yeah, I can help you lead you to someone who is enlightened, like the both of you two. Um, and that's what, that's what I'm working on. I mentioned to you earlier, I was working on a course, and the whole point of working on that course is so whenever they do meet an enlightened teacher, they're ready. That's something I can do. Is make them ready for that, and that's hopefully in the summer that'll be launched. But yeah, I mean, I find it amazing when people say they're enlightened. I find it fine. I don't know if they're joking around or what they're trying to do, but let's get into this a little. Isn't saying I'm enlightened another form of identity?
Isn't saying your name is Rahul another form of identity?
I mean, it is identity. Yeah, I have to function as Rahul in the world, otherwise I won't get paid or I won't get.
I think it's the same with calling yourself enlightened. If Shiva doesn't call himself enlightened, he won't get paid either.
Yes, and you know what? That's very true. I think there's something in that. There is something in that. I think if you're ready for that, then go ahead. But I honestly feel like, again, what I'm saying here is not necessarily you or Shiva. I'm saying when somebody says that they're enlightened, is it not? Can it not become another layer of identity that they need to transcend eventually?
I think of it in terms of what clothes am I wearing? What costume am I portraying? I hold identity far away, like these clothes. I'm wearing these clothes consciously. I'm taking my identity on consciously as well.
Mm. So you're in full awareness.
Yes. I
What does
also
that
want
mean?
to.
And
Well, I don't know, but I want to share this little quick story. When the Buddha sat down under that tree, he became enlightened. Then he went down to Varanasi to teach. And on the way, a wandering ascetic stopped him and said, "Wow, my friend, you're so serene. What's your name? Who are you?" And the Buddha said, "Oh, I'm perfectly enlightened. I'm the teacher of teachers on the planet. I'm the most wise, amazing person. And I'm going to teach a bunch of people there." And the wandering ascetic was like, "Oh, wow, impressive. All right, carry on. Take care." So the Buddha had no hesitation of proclaiming his achievements and enlightenment, and yeah. So I use it for marketing purposes mainly.
I
I
agree
think
with that. I
I think it
agree
just
with
gives
that.
context. I think it just gives
Mm,
context to what one's experiencing. I think if you're using it as an attachment, you're attached to it as an identity. It's a different story.
yeah.
But if you're just giving context to explain something, I don't think it really matters. The problem is, I think a lot of people have like a, I don't know what the right word is, but maybe a shadow around the term enlightenment. We had a conversation recently with Reese, right? He's like, "Oh, I don't want that word." It's like, but there's so much resistance. There's a trigger when you even bring the word up. So what is that? Inquire about
Mm.
that. Is that because you have some feeling of uh, issue with being an authority figure? Is it because you're afraid of being perceived in a certain, whatever it may be? I always believe there is a root if you're avoiding something. So I think really just comes back to non-resistance of the ebbs and flows. I can be enlightened and I can also not be enlightened. I don't think it even matters.
Yeah. Or it may not be true. That's also why resistance.
Yes. Um, but technically, we are all enlightened, whether we know it or not. On the technical terms, that we're all Brahman, we all, Tattvamasi, you are that. That's Sri Krishna's declaration. Uh, that's the declarations of the Upanishads, the Hindu sages. I think our Sadhguru sang the Mahavakya Aham Brahmasmi. It's on Sounds of Isha. I've heard it. It's nice to meditate to. So they're pointed towards this. So yeah, if in fact it's a lie to say you're in ignorance. it's a lie to say you're in ignorance. I've got a story for this. So the fortunate thing of living in an Indian household is, well, it's fortunate and unfortunate. Fortunate in the sense you get to watch the Indian TV channels. The unfortunate thing is there's a lot of nonsense, kind of drama shows that they have on them, and if you've ever watched it, it's mind numbing. It's pure brain rot. Um, but you have there's one show called Devukadev Mahadev, and it's a story about Lord Shiva. And um, at one point, Mata Parvati, who's his wife, loses her memory of who she is. So she's in ignorance of who she really is. So it's causing destruction on the planet. So Brahma and Vishnu, who are obviously the deities, they're seeing this destruction happening because she's the divine mother, she's the Shakti. So they go up to Shivji and they're like, are you going to do something? Because this is creating havoc. We need to do something. He's in a meditative absorption. He's like, this is the way it's going to play out. And they're like, no, you need to do something. So eventually he agrees. So then he has a conversation. So he then goes to see the Lord of Ignorance. So when he meets the Lord of Ignorance, they have a very interesting dialogue. And Shivji tells him, you need to leave. You need to stop veiling the truth to Mata Parvati now. You got to end this. And the Lord of Ignorance just laughs in his face. He's like, I'm not leaving. And Shivji was like, with a bit of anger now, you need to leave. I'm telling you to leave. And the Lord of Ignorance says something very interesting. He goes, Lord Shiva, you know that I don't exist. I'm not even here. I am not. And Lord Shiva says, yes, whatever is not, I also am that. So in a way, he was kind of, it's a double thing going on. One, he's declaring that even ignorance is what he is, but also at the same time, he's showing that ignorance doesn't even exist. So the lie is that ignorance exists, that I'm in ignorance. So the truth is actually everyone is enlightened. Some people are happily to admit that. But the
What do
lie
you
is that we're ignorant. What do you think about that, man?
What do you think about that, Shiva?
I think that's nice to say. Unfortunately, I don't think it's true. I think lots of people are suffering there on the planet, and if ties into the Neo Advaita stuff, if you come to them and say, "Hey, there's really no ignorance. Just you're enlightened already." Oh my God, thank you so much. It didn't work like that for me. I know that. So maybe there is no ignorance because ignorance, implies lack of something, lack of knowledge. But there definitely is some skaras, painful wounding of the mind that causes lots of pain. So yeah,
You're right.
that
I
needs to be
mean,
eradicated.
yes, I mean, you're definitely right. People are definitely suffering. My point was something else. Was from the point of if you say you're enlightened, from that point of view, actually, you know that ignorance doesn't truly exist. But yes, the 8 billion people of the world, of course, there's suffering of some sort there. Even if they are in pleasure, even that will end up becoming suffering. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. So it was right to point that out, to be honest. So the Neo advisors are somewhat right. but but I think they're just it's funny actually, because when they say there's no one here to get anything, yet then they publish a book. You're like, what are you doing? If there's nobody here to get anything, why have you published a book? Why are you holding these kind of meetings on Zoom or in person? Why are you holding these retreats? If there's no one here to get anything, to understand anything, there's no concept. Why even on YouTube? I mean, at this point, because there shouldn't be YouTube existing in this, because there's
Mm,
nothing here. Do you see? What I'm trying to point to is the loop that it takes you to, where
mm,
you use more of your mind, using more of your thought, than actually getting to the absence of, uh, or going to the awareness of thought. Instead of stabilizing in awareness, you have to keep playing that game of reminding yourself there's nothing for me to get. There's no one here. There's no one suffering. There's no one here with suicidal thoughts. There's no one here in depression. That's what I find dangerous,
mm,
especially if someone who is in depression and they're coming to you because they want a way out. And that's why, if you've noticed, um, people like Rupert Spira, um, I think Muji has it or had it for sure. They would have mental health experts, professionals at their retreats, um, and also available to the community if needed.
Mm.
Because obviously, that we've heard about Bentino having, so I think someone committed suicide, unfortunately, at one of his retreats. I think Muji also had a few kind of people pass away, commit suicide. So yeah, the thing is, this truth is so radical. Even on an Advaita Vedanta point of view, it is still very radical. Let me put it this way. I use Sadhguru because I see him there, Shiva. He's a good reminder. Like, if everyone thought they could go on to, was it Chamundi Hill that he got enlightened on?
yes.
If everyone thought they could go onto Chamundi Hill, just sit there and get the same experience as him, that ain't gonna happen. Nobody knows what work he did before then or in his previous lives. Yeah,
Right. Makes sense. It's just missing context, I think, is the way that it's
exactly.
summed.
Yeah.
Having this conversation makes me realize I want to live and stay true to my name, Shiva, the Lord of Destruction. This time period has become slightly slow for me, and now I want more destruction. So I think I will take Rahul's advice and invite more Neo Advaita teachers and discuss with them, debate with them, battle with them. I think that'll, yeah, give me a lot of fuel.
Yeah, good luck on getting them. I mean, I don't know if they will accept
Right, there's
the
nothing here, so
invitation. Yeah.
yeah.
But it'd be interesting because, so I don't want to talk about Artem behind his back, but I kind of feel like Artem doesn't utilize their. I've accused him of this before. I'm taking that accusation back. Um, he's not completely Neo Advaita at all, because he doesn't say there's nobody here, there's nothing to get. He actually, in a way, makes sure that you understand there's a human experience going on, and he does the inquiry through that process. See, I find that to be much better than the other way of saying there's. Both are going to create loops, in my opinion, of inquiry, but you got more chance of getting out of that loop with, I think, Artem's approach than the Neo Advaita approach, because everyone's not Leo who's going to find Shiva. So
Well, Shiva found Leah.
Shiva,
Yeah, whichever way.
whichever way.
But yeah, it's also very profound. This teaching is not a simple teaching. There's nothing here, there's nobody here. That's basically the whole path.
Yeah,
If you just say that to somebody and they understand, it's over.
yeah.
But are they? And Yeah, does it lead to more confusion? I
It just
was,
won't ground you. It just won't ground you.
yeah.
You're gonna say something.
Yeah, I was struggling with this many years ago. I was profoundly spiritual, at least I thought I was, and went to all these retreats. And I remember at one point I was under the influence of some vegetables, and I had this like, I want to escape my human existence because it was so painful. And I thought if I just become more spiritual, somehow I'll just fly away into ultimate new earth type energy or something. And as I started coming down, I realized, okay, I need to take a radical change because there is a human experience. I have a physical, a hard, coarse body, and I have to live in alignment with that. I can't just, spiritual my way out of things. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah. And another one people use, you talking about vegetable. For some, I don't. This reminded me of how people talk about Ramana Maharishi, because he used to just sit and he didn't really do anything. He would say one sentences here and there, but everything he said literally was like bringing you back to awareness. What people miss out on, these Neo-Advaitins, when they adopt Ramana Maharishi's name, well, he was talking about consciousness. He was talking about Brahman. He was not talking about there's nothing here. There's no one here to get anything. He wasn't doing that. Um, and I think that has to be made clear for some people that say, well, Ramana was uh, to be blamed for this Neo Advaita. He's not. It's some people who found the crux of the teaching and then just went with it. The other thing that I'm finding these days is that these Neo Advaitins end up talking about like masculinity and femininity, the masculine and feminine. And I don't know where that comes from, where they go from. There's nothing here to there's the masculine and there's the feminine.
It's
I,
funny.
I'm really and Negus is not the only one. There's a number of them that have done this. They've taken this leap, and then they go into this Christ consciousness thing, and I'm like thinking, where is all this coming from? So I think something is there that's not being addressed for those people when they mention the masculine and the feminine, and when they mention Christ consciousness. There is something that has not been addressed in the time they were in Neo Advaita, if that makes sense.
I think a lot of it can stem from a wound, some kind of trauma. I mean, I mentioned in a previous video speaking about enlightened charlatans about how if we go back to the historical events of what actually created the awakening, we'll see what actually happened for certain people. One of the ladies that we speak about, she was rejected by a man, and that was supposedly her root chakra integration and then her enlightenment. And so again, when I look at that, I see, oh, that's a very traumatic response that made a person feel inferior. And so what did they do? What did they do to cover that inferiority? They became super grandiose. They created an identity of enlightenment, Christ-like, I'm Christ, etc., etc. And I think this is common with a lot of these people that did fall into the Neo Advaita. It's like as they started to progress, there was a wound. Something happened on a psychological level, but we don't have the full context when we see them speaking on these YouTube channels. And that's what I love about doing these with Shiva is like we drill into people until we get the truth. You don't
Yeah.
see that anywhere else.
Mm.
You don't see teachers when they're smoking their vape or they're doing whatever. Like we're bringing light to things that no one truthfully sees behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
yeah,
Or the new one is like they mix it in with abundance. Like there's abundance here. And you're like, okay, what's this got to do with non-duality?
Mm.
He can become a millionaire. You know what? Again, what's this got to do with non-duality? I've had one person talk about abundance and then quote Ramana Maharishi, and there can be something I found that so stupid and silly. I'm thinking, this was a man that only had one loincloth.
He just had a cloth, yeah.
Yeah. And one bed that he laid on. And you're talking about abundance in the next sentence.
It depends on what we mean by abundance as well. There's so much. I think context is everything. You can say that fullness is abundance. Abundance is everything. If you're
Yeah.
speaking about from a material level, it's a whole different story.
Or you can do the route that I think Osho and Sadhguru have taken, where they say, you know what?
Get loads of
Yes,
Rolls Royces.
yeah, I live my life in luxury, but that's me living simply. I may not have 1,000 houses, but I have one house, and yeah, I'm gonna make sure it's top of the range. I'm gonna make sure I'm comfortable. Yeah, I need a helicopter because it makes it easier to travel. Yeah, common sense things. One can say, "Oh, how can they afford a helicopter?" But you can look at and they may talk about, "Oh, well, he's talking about climate change, but then he's got a helicopter." But at the same time, you got to understand, um, he'd probably waste more gas if he did it by car than he did by helicopter, or he could save a lot more people's lives, spiritually speaking. Do you see, like, again, we're talking about the full picture, right? Like, people only see the appearance, but like, I remember the 99 Rolls Royces that Osho had, and the fact that he manufactured the headline that the press ended up using. And he says, this is a joke on capitalism, that I can do this. I can get 99 Rolls Royces, line them up. Your capitalism has made me do that. He was a mirror to the system. And obviously, the system's going to reject that reflection. It should be hidden. Nobody should see those 99 Rolls Royces.
I want to add here that Sadhguru has already planted a lot more than 120 million trees, and he has a plan to plant 2.4 billion trees in the next coming few years. So let the man
There you
fly in
go.
the helicopter and private jet.
Yeah.
He's doing good.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that's the vision that non-duality gives you, in my opinion. It gets you out of that dualistic judgment. Um, where a year ago I probably would have judged people for it. Today I don't. Now I kind of see the full picture of what's going on, the pros and cons. That's what discernment brings. So here is a one. Detachment is very different to disassociating from yourself. When you disassociate from yourself, that's not detachment. Detachment is, there's an identification here, but you choose not to give in. You know that you're attached to a certain way of life, a certain type of food, a certain type of car, house. But if that goes in the next second, you're okay. You're not going to fall under pain or pleasure. While if you go the other way, where if I say to you, there's no one here, no one getting it, that's not detachment. That's complete, what they say in Buddhism, best word ever, shunya, of the void. And that's dangerous. Not shunya itself, but when we disassociate from the human experience. So, and one of the prerequisites in Advaita Vedanta is detachment. So you have to learn detachment before you get to non-duality.
I just want to say that the spiritual teachings can be misused and you could be misled so heavily, so badly. You can accumulate so much more pain onto yourself if you don't know what you're doing because you're messing with the very fundamentals of your life. So don't do that. Seek a professional teacher. You know, Sadhguru is alive. Other sages and masters are alive too also. Seek them out and do this properly. Go slowly. Don't jump into some woman claiming things and making decisions based on that. You got to be careful what you're doing here. And I know firsthand, personal experience, how painful my life was and how much I've pushed myself because I just didn't understand. There's nothing here, so to speak. But there is this body and there is this mind. And you got to take care of that first and foremost. That's who you are also. Or that's what you have. So don't break yourself on the path. Tread slowly.
Beautiful.
All right. This is it. We'll leave it all off here. Thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you. Thank you.
See you again next time.